and welcome to this unique virtual candidate debate between the individuals running to represent the 107th Assembly District in the New York State Legislature. I want to welcome this evening Jake Ashby, the incumbent and the candidate from the Republican, Conservative, and Independence parties, Charles Senrick, the Libertarian Party candidate, and Brittany Vogel, candidate from the Democratic Party and the Working Families Party. This debate is hosted by the League of Women Voters of Rensselaer County and co-hosted by the Sanctuary for Independent Media. I'm very grateful to both the League and to the Sanctuary for this partnership that makes this debate possible tonight. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan, volunteer political organization that encourages informed and active participation in government. While the League does take positions on particular issues, it does not support or oppose political parties or candidates. Tonight, you'll hear opening statements from each of the candidates. Before this event began, the candidates drew lots to determine the order in which they would deliver their opening and closing statements. That process resulted in Charles Senrick becoming the first to deliver his opening statement, followed by Assemblymember Jake Ashby, and then followed by Brittany Vogel. And then the order will be reversed for the closing statements, and the candidates will alternate the order in which they answer the 6 or so questions that I'll pose to them during this debate. The debate will last probably about an hour. The candidates will have 2 minutes each for their opening statements and to answer each question. They'll get a 30-second warning from our volunteer from the League of Women Voters, Joan Rogers. That's what it'll look like to everyone. And then at the conclusion of their respective 2 minutes, they will see, and you will see also, a stop sign from Joan, at which time, if the candidate is still speaking, I will mute him or her. I will then ask a series of 6 questions on a variety of topics submitted to the League of Women Voters by members of the public. We'll be using a system of what we call red cards, which will allow candidates to extend their answers, add to their responses, or respond to something that another candidate has said. Using one of the 2 red cards that each candidate has will allow the candidate to speak for an additional 1.5 minutes. And we'll use the same red card system from Joan, the same warnings from Joan to let them know when their time is almost up. If there is time after the 6 questions that I plan to pose, we'll move on to a lightning round with 4 to 5 questions for which the one-word answers will either be yes, no, or pass. Nothing more than yes, no, or pass. Closing statements will work the same way that the opening statements did. 2 minutes per person. Brittany Vogel will give the closing statement first. Jake Ashby will give the second closing statement, and Charles Senrick will have the final word. So, with all of that said, let's begin. Charles Senrick, take it away.
Thank you. Greetings to you all. We are living through a trying time in New York State and in the country. We have kids being killed in our streets. We have some police being accused and of targeting, and in some cases killing people based on their race. Throw on top of this sad state of affairs the COVID-19 pandemic, and is it any wonder that the fabric of our mental health is being frayed to its limits? All the while, our so-called leaders are playing to crowds and TV cameras, saying what great things they have done. But looking at the COVID-19 problem as it applies to New York State, it was the people and businesses that have gotten us through this. Most people have done what they had to do to try to stay safe and continue to provide for their families. Businesses have done their best to keep their businesses open and their employees working. These things had to be pulled off amidst ever-changing guidelines and regulations from the government. Here in New York State, the legislature hung around just long enough to abdicate its responsibilities to the governor, who of course was very ready to take control. Deeper in red ink due to the businesses he chose to close, he made decisions on who was essential and who was not. He also moved COVID-19 patients into nursing homes poorly equipped to handle them, which endangered countless lives. As for the killings, I believe the answer is not defunding the police, because they can provide useful service in protecting our rights from those who would infringe on them. But it is important that we also hold accountable those members of the police who infringe on others' rights. I saw a quote from Andrew Cuomo's first term as governor, where he said, "I am the government." He is wrong. The legislature is part of the government, and
your time is up. I'm going to stop you. Thank you so much for that opening statement. I know how quickly time goes. So Brittany Vogel, you're up. Oh, I'm sorry, Jake Ashby, you're up next. And you need to unmute yourself. Can I unmute you? Can someone unmute? There we go.
Thank you.
Go ahead, your time begins now.
Good evening. Thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting tonight's forum, and to the Sanctuary. And thank you to my opponents for participating in an important event for this year's election. We've had a challenging year, and I expect 2021 will pose significant challenges as well. Growing up in a working class family, we experienced hardships together, as many are today. My parents provided a powerful example of perseverance and success. My mother worked as an LPN in a local nursing home, my father as a custodian at a local printing company. My parents, brother, aunt, grandmother, and I lived in a 3-bedroom duplex in the village of Castleton. Times were not easy, but my parents' desire to make a better life was steadfast. My father started a local landscaping business and went back to school so he could teach phys ed. I can remember working with him during the day and reading next to him at night in the library. I remember playing games in the nursing home with the nursing home residents while my mother worked, and thinking about what she meant when she remarked how much it meant to spend time with the residents. I think we are all considering that right now. Difficult times and challenges helped shape our family and us as individuals. I'm certain it led me to pursue a career in healthcare, serve our country in the Army, start my own business, teach at a local college, and serve in public office. In the short time I've been in office, we have seen no shortage of challenges facing many throughout the district. Our team has helped hundreds of constituents with unemployment claims and a variety of other issues. We have sought input by holding mobile office hours in nearly every town within the 107th district. I author numerous pieces of legislation which have bipartisan support and Democrat sponsorship in the Senate. I expect we will agree on many of the problems facing the district tonight, but it is our responsibility as legislators to put forth balanced solutions. Measured responses will build a more sustainable foundation for our recovery and future success. I look forward to the dialogue tonight and remain grateful for this opportunity to serve.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ashby. Ms. Vogel, you're up next.
Thank you. And again, thank you to the League of Women Voters and the Sanctuary for Independent Media for hosting this event. It's really great to be able to reach out to our voters in the district. So I appreciate the opportunity. Like Jake said, I'm also a working class person. I grew up in Rotterdam, New York, and my dad works 80 hours a week and they still live paycheck to paycheck. When I was 16 years old, I got a job at my local Hannaford. It was 2008, the year of the recession. So my entire adult life has been revolved around, economic despair and an economic recovery that really didn't take care of the working people, which is what we're facing right now. Right now, I'm working as an assistant store manager. I actually just left the Troy Hannaford, and now I'm working at the Kinderhook store. I've worked throughout the district my entire adult life, interacting with the community, interacting with the employees who also live in the community. And I've really gotten a fresh experience, perspective, insight, and understanding of what's really going on with the working people. We're struggling right now. The pandemic recovery is not going to do what's right for the working people if we don't step up and do what's right for us. It's why I'm running for office. It's why I think that we need to bring our state in a new direction that really gives a better deal for working people, and I have that vision. I care about economic responsibility. I care about the environment and how we're going to bring our economy to the future and out of the industrial economy and into the technological era. I think we need to really focus on how we take care of our institutions of public health and public safety and public education and public transportation, all those things that require government putting in the money and putting in the effort and providing the services that our constituents need. I think that we've gone away from taking care of working people and helping people reach their potential. Experiences that I've had at work have really brought me to this point in my life. Whether it was the 19-year-old cake decorator who lost her mother to an overdose, or the 76-year-old employee who is losing, her husband is losing to dementia and can't retire. I'll leave it there.
Thank you so much, Ms. Vogel. Okay, we're gonna start in on the questions now. And the first person that I'll ask to answer this question will be Assemblymember Ashby, followed by Ms. Vogel and Mr. Senrick. So the question is, what 2 or 3 issues would be your primary focus if elected? And Mr. Ashby, go ahead.
I think my primary focus, and it's tough to narrow it down to 2 or 3, but I think what we're really missing in the legislature right now is balance and really opportunity. When we look at how our government is functioning right now at the state level, the governor is really calling all of the shots, and that's leading to a lot of dysfunction. And it would be my primary effort, first of all, to bring the legislature back and join in that effort so that we can function more effectively. As far as issues then to take on, I think public safety would be at the top of the list. Economic development would also be in there. And then there's many other things that stem from both of those issues that we would address accordingly. But as of right now, when we look at how things are functioning, or not functioning in New York State, rather, a lot of people out there are hurting. And I think their voices are falling on deaf ears when it comes to our governor. And that remains a priority for me, is getting his attention when we look at what's happening in nursing homes, across our state, how our elderly are being treated, how the developmentally disabled are being treated right now. It's unbelievable, and it's very difficult to get the governor's attention and hold it on these issues and make sure that these voices are being heard. And it remains a priority for me. And I know many other legislators. This is not a partisan issue. I've joined with many of my Democrat colleagues across the state in trying to elevate these issues, elevate these voices, get their attention, and really make a difference for them.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ashby. Ms. Vogel.
Yeah, a lot of my priorities stem from the environmental causes and the way that we can transform our economy and how we can invest in our infrastructure, things like broadband, things like high-speed rail, things like adapting our energy systems to the 21st century, doing these things that will actually bring us to the future, and it will bring us a sustainable future that will protect our environment. I also care about working people. It's unfortunate that my opponent votes against working people. He takes corporate money, and then he votes against bills like prevailing wages and allowing employers to use credit reports on you in terms of hiring. He takes money from construction companies and then denies extending paid family leave rights to construction workers, and also against retaliatory practices for workers' comp claims. So those things matter. Those things matter to both Republicans and Democrats in my districts. And we need someone who's going to actually represent the people of this district. It's important anytime more than and ever that the working people have a real say and a real voice at the assembly, and is going to do what's right for them. Not taking corporate money is one of my values and principles that I hold. It keeps me independent. It keeps me independent from Democrats and Republicans. I have no qualms about saying, you know, how is that money influencing you? How is that influencing what you're doing in the legislature? I will be a strong voice calling out those that do take that money, and we need a, you know, a real change in how our elected leaders are brought into office and how campaign finance is, you know, worked through the legislature. So with that, and then my vision is, you know, making a better world for working people, and we do that by investing in our infrastructure, investing in education, not cutting education 20%, but actually taxing the billionaires who've made so much money off this pandemic and have, you know, can contribute so much more. You know, Donald Trump paying $750 in taxes really puts a pin in it for the working class that, you know, we really are getting the short end of the stick. So that's what I'm going to bring to the assembly.
Ms. Vogel, thank you. Mr. Senrick.
I think the top thing I would focus on is regulation. We just heard today about a scathing report about the fact that the two agencies did not pull the limo off the road that ended up killing 20 people in Carey. So the regulations that are in effect to protect people, I believe, should be actually enforced. And there are a lot of regulations that do not, their purpose is not necessarily to protect people, but they hurt people's chances to get jobs, licensing regulations, and basically the second thing I think is important is criminal justice, and the police. I think we should support the police to the extent that they don't need, we should support them to the extent that they do a good job in protecting our rights, but we don't want them infringing on others' rights, and they shouldn't have the ability to get away from that. Environment is the last. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So the next question is about criminal justice, and our first respondent will be Ms. Vogel, followed by Mr. Senrick, followed by Mr. Ashby. And I want to remind each of the candidates that if you'd like to invoke your red card, please do so in a vehement way, because I can't see every box. So I'm trying to pay attention and I don't want to miss you. So if you are asking to use your red card, just make it well known. All right, so question number 2. The legislature reformed state bail laws in April of 2019, limiting the number of crimes for which judges could set bail, mostly just for those who were deemed to have been found guilty of violent felonies. In the months since it was implemented on January 1st, 2020, jail populations have gone down across the state. How would you evaluate these reforms? And Ms. Vogel, again, you're first, followed by Mr. Senrick and then Mr. Ashby. Ms. Vogel?
Sure. So I think when you understand justice and you understand that you're innocent until proven guilty, and that we should have not a two-tier justice where the wealthy can, you know, commit crimes and post bail. Yet if you are struggling, you know, living paycheck to paycheck, you might not be able to post bail. Understanding what bail is the first step. You know, everyone will still get their day in court. It's not saying that you get away with away with it. You actually, still have to serve your time if you're found guilty afterwards. But I do think that it's a step in the right direction for, criminal justice, for economic justice, for our Black and brown neighborhoods that are increasingly and always put up, in those situations where they're being held accountable, 10 times more than a white person committing the same crime. That's why I support legalizing marijuana, because justice reform doesn't just come from bail reform. I think there's so much more we can do to support those communities who are in desperate need and of assistance and help and education and all of those things. So I think it's about making a culture where crime doesn't become a thing. How do we prevent crime with mental health services? How do we transform our public safety and really think about, the future of public safety, and should cops be responding to every single type of call? We put so much on their shoulders, and really, expect them to be, superheroes. They need to be, protecting our safety and security, but they shouldn't be going to mental health calls where, a lot of people are going back, getting arrested, getting arrested. They should be, brought to a mental health clinic. People with drug problems, they should be, I have family members who are in jail because of heroin addiction. So I understand so deeply what the drug, addictions do to people, and those people should be helped, not sent to jail. Like, we need to really rethink our systems of justice. I support the bail reform, and I think that it New Jersey does the same, and I think they're seeing the right results. I'm open if there's issues to address that, but in general, we need that. Two tiers of justice.
Thank you, Ms. Vogel. Mr. Senrick.
I agree with Brittany about the inequities in bail, that it's not good that someone who is poor would have to stay in jail while somebody who is rich for the same crime would be able to get out. And I also believe that what she said about the drug laws, that we basically believe that the drugs should be legalized so that that would not clog up our prisons. It's one way of reducing the population. But I don't believe the population itself, just because, it's going down a certain amount, that's not what we should be concerned with. We should be concerned if some of those people who are out on bail then are free to commit crimes if they are so inclined. So this is something I think we have to work with those involved and see the best way of handling that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Senrick. Mr. Ashby.
I appreciate the question. Bail reform certainly has had a negative impact in what we're seeing, and it's something that I opposed. And I wasn't alone. There were many legislators on both sides of the aisle that opposed this for various reasons, and I think we're seeing the results of that. And it had such a negative impact in the beginning that we had to come back and take up on many of those issues and made changes to the law. And I think this goes back to what I was speaking earlier about balance, right? I mean, we need to have more balance in the legislature when we're considering large-scale reforms like bail reform. And my opponent brings up New Jersey. Well, one of the things that New Jersey did that New York is failed to recognize judicial discretion. New York still does not have judicial discretion the way New Jersey does. And I think that has had a better impact in New Jersey than what we're seeing in New York right now. And I've talked to many law enforcement officials, police chiefs from East Greenbush, Elaine Rosinski, John Horgan from Schodack, Bob Ash from Hoosick Falls, Mary Pat Donnelly, District Attorney for Rensselaer County, Paul Chaika from Columbia County, and Tony Jordan in Washington County. And they all agree that these reforms were too big. They were too big. They were not measured. And a lot of them felt like their voices were not being heard. How many hearings did we have on this before it was enacted? And were their voices being considered? And I don't think they were, and we're seeing the results of that today. And I think it should be a main priority, and I listed it as such in my opening remarks, that we take up immediately when we go back to session.
Thank you, Mr. Ashby. Question number 3 is about something that we're all dealing with and have been for the past few months, COVID-19. Once I ask the question, Mr. Senrick will be the first to answer, followed by Mr. Ashby and then Ms. Vogel. COVID-19 has wreaked unprecedented devastation on our state budget. What are 1 or 2 things that you would consider cutting or reducing to make the budget work during this era? And what are the 1 or 2 things that are essential and should not be cut? Mr. Senrick.
I believe that we have to do something about the Medicaid problem, which at this particular time it would be tough to do that, probably because of the fact that we're in the pandemic. But I think we would have to go through and see what we could cut. The education is something that's been a problem, funding for education, so that would be difficult to cut. That's.
Thank you, Mr. Senrick. Mr. Ashby.
I think before we look at cutting anything, we need to look at how the money is being spent and where the waste is. And when we look at what our comptroller just did with Medicaid, one of his audits came out and found $700 million in fraud and waste. And, you know, this is not anything new. You know, this happens quite frequently. You know, we need to go back and look at those areas and look at how we can better utilize those funds. Areas that we can immediately cut, I think, if we look at the Hollywood programs, tax credits that the governor brings in, I think that can immediately go, and that money should be used to help small business. And, you know, our conference has put forward legislation, you know, doing just that. I co-sponsored the legislation. I think, you know, that's something that we can do right off the bat. I also author legislation that would provide a $5,000 tax credit for small business or any modification that they made to their business to adapt to COVID-19. And I think it's imperative. I think we're seeing the impacts that COVID-19 is having on small business right now and how it's affecting people's lives across the state and in this district. And we don't have, you know, time to wait for the governor to really notice this. If he is, I think we need to go back as a legislature as soon as we can and take care of this and consider this. You know, the comptroller does a heck of a job, and we need to acknowledge that work that he and his staff are doing and take that into consideration going forward.
Thank you, Mr. Ashby. Ms. Vogel.
So we're 7 months into the pandemic. Over 200,000 people have died. Over 1,000 people are still dying to this day. And I really think on the federal level, they've done such a failure of leading in this crisis and doing what's right, not just for the red states, but for the blue states as well. You know, we're so divided right now where we're not taking care of the working people. You know, I'm a working person. I work at a grocery store. I'm an essential worker. So I've been dealing with it since the absolute beginning when, you know, everyone was panic buying and people were rushing in, and then, you know, we're wearing masks, and then I'm fighting with people that don't want to wear a mask because that's now a political statement to wear a mask. And all that time, the working people, the people, my employees are struggling. They're struggling to find childcare. They're struggling to, you know, figure out what their education of their kids is going to be, struggling to pay their rent. You know, so many people right now are backlogged in rent. They can't pay their rent. And so absolutely no cuts to any of those services I support. You know, it is not a time to put more pressure on working people. It's time to put pressure on those who have done so much better in this kind of economy, the millionaires and the billionaires, you know, the Wall Streets, the people that are getting subsidies, the people that are, you know, using loopholes to avoid taxes. Those are the people that really need to step up and take care. You know, if they want to be a part of our society, it's their turn to actually provide, you know, as much as the working people provide every single day, you know, on the front lines, you know, and our you know, healthcare workers, all of these people that are doing so much to keep our society up and running. It's time for the millionaires and billionaires to pay their fair share. So I support, you know, a millionaire's tax. I support the stock transfer tax, the 2% tax. All of these things are really going to bring that funding, and we're going to pressure the federal government, who really should be stepping up right now, supporting. You know, we're in unprecedented times. This is not normal times. We should be getting the support for our schools, for our children, for, you know, feeding our families, for paying our rents. There really needs to be a federal program. That's why we need to vote for Joe Biden, who will actually take care of our state.
Thank you, Ms. Vogel. We'll move on to the fourth question, which deals with the environment, and we'll have Mr. Ashby answer first, followed by Ms. Vogel, and then Mr. Senrick. The question is, what do you see as the most important environmental issue in Rensselaer County? Mr. Ashby.
Clean water, to be brief. But it continues to be the most important environmental issue that we see in Rensselaer County and in the district as well. You know, when we look back, going back as far as 1950 in the Dewey-Lowville Superfund site in Nassau, you know, it's amazing to think that people in that town have been advised to drink bottled water since then. It blows my mind. And I think Dave Fleming, the town supervisor, has done a phenomenal job. I've worked with Dave on a lot of different initiatives to help draw attention to this. I work with both congressmen, Congressman Paul Tonko and Congressman Delgado have been out to the site and have been helpful in some ways on this issue. But we start to see issues like this when they're longstanding and they become chronic issues, and we start tracking them more effectively now, we do start to see it bleed into Columbia County as well. So it's not something that we can wait to address. The EPA and the state seem to be playing this game where they go back and forth on who's responsible for helping and taking care of this. It's not something that we can waste time on playing blame game. We need to step up and take the initiative. But at the same time, it's not something that either agency can do alone. And Hoosick Falls definitely is an ongoing issue. DEC has done a better job in providing assistance to families up in that area, and Mayor Rob Allen has done a great job in being a leader on this issue, along with Mark Serdam, and I'm happy to help in any way and in many of the ways that I have throughout my tenure.
Thank you, Mr. Ashby. Ms. Vogel.
So it's interesting that my opponent says he cares about clean water, and so do I. It's one of the most important things that I think that our community should be caring about. But he actually voted no on a bill that would close hazardous waste loopholes for oil and gas. So, oil and gas and fracking, all of that does so much damage to our water and our environment. He also voted no to ban weed killer. on our state properties, which is known carcinogen, known to cause cancer, known to pollute our water. So if you are for clean water, why would you not support those kind of bills? The environment is one of the main things that we should be caring about right now. It's not the next year, it's not the next 10 years, it's the next 50, 100 years. How is our planet going to be sustainable? How are we going to take care of, the generations to come? Because right now we're on a path towards destruction. When we have the haze in the sky the other day, I was running, driving towards Kinderhook, and I saw the haze in the sky. That's scary stuff, and that's stuff that's going to keep happening. The water is going to rise, the storms are going to get stronger. We need to be preparing for those events. We need to be planning, on a government level for those events, because those are going to be billions of dollars, very costly to our state. The other main thing that I care about in my district, and it's right outside my district, but I still care because it kills me that this is happening. It's the Dunn landfill. It's placed 200 feet away from a school, known to cause, again, cancer, cause health problems. Those kids are going to be, have issues for their entire lives because of those things. And we also have the bio high tech trying to come in and do the same thing. And, I'm going to stand up and stop that. We need to reopen the environmental impact assessment report that they, were able to smooth through, just like they did with the Dunn landfill. We're not going to fall for it again. Even though they're not my community, or in my district, I care about them and I care about those children. And I'll do whatever I can to close the landfill and to make sure that this bio high tech does not come into Rensselaer.
Thank you, Ms. Vogel. Mr. Senrick.
I agree that clean water is an important problem in Rensselaer County and throughout the district. The Dewey Lawful landfill and another site associated with that, which I believe is in Columbia County or Southern Rensselaer, is something that has to be addressed. And also we've had a problem with air, the burning from Norlight has fallout from that went into the district. And also we do have to be watchful of the fossil fuel industry, because they have tried to build infrastructure within the county, and they were put aside for that. But with the current administration, one never knows when that might be a problem again. So those are the issues that I believe are important.
Thank you so much, Mr. Senrick.
Corinne, I'd like to use a red card.
Sure, go ahead, Mr. Ashby. Joan, be on the lookout.
All right, thank you. Just to address something that was brought up regarding clean water and my priorities, I sponsor legislation to mandate the limits on 1,4-dioxane, and was the first member to put forth such legislation, gained bipartisan support on it, and it was adopted by the Clean Water Council. So to attempt to say that this is something that I don't take seriously, I think is disingenuous. And that, and with the Dunn landfill, I also sponsor legislation to close that landfill immediately. And I'm in the only legislator to have such legislation. So I just wanted to clarify those points for our listeners.
Thank you, Mr. Ashby.
I could follow up real quick. I read that legislation. It really wasn't a bill, it was a sentence. I don't think that writing a bill that says I authorize to close the landfill really is a plan. So I'm just gonna add that.
So I just wanna be clear that both Mr. Ashby and Mr. Vogel have used their red cards. You have one more, Mr. Ashby, one more, Ms. Vogel, and you have 2 red cards, Mr. Senrick. We're gonna move on to question number 5, which is about ethics. Is the Joint Commission on Public Ethics and Legislative Ethics Commission, JCOPE, working? Or would you support efforts to replace it with a new agency? And going first on this question is Ms. Vogel, followed by Mr. Senrick, followed by Mr. Ashby. Ms. Vogel.
Yeah, I do support, we need to really reform the way we look at ethics, the way we see the JCOP. I really think that there's issues of people, we're not taking into consideration how that money that people are donating to your campaign, those companies that are donating to your campaign are influencing your vote. So that's what really needs to be brought up. We need to have anti-corruption. We need to have people, an independent, not someone from the Senate, some people in the Assembly or in the Senate. We need an outside independent ethics committee, and that's what I would support.
Thank you, Ms. Vogel. Mr. Senrick.
I do believe that we would need an independent commission, but the question is, what is independent? Most of the commissions that are formed by state government are chosen by the people in state government. So we, if there's a way to reform it as it stands, we should do that. I don't believe that just redoing a new commission will have the results that we desire. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Senrick. Mr. Ashby.
So yes, I think that JCOPE needs to be reformed or dissolved. And is it working? Well, really right now, there's not much cooperation or balance in our government that's working right now. And it's, again, something that we need to come back to and address. I co-sponsor the Public Officers Accountability Act through our conference, which establishes a bipartisan commission on official conduct and amends finance law to monitor these things. Again, I don't believe that it gets the necessary traction that it should because there's not balance there. These issues need to be continuously brought up. I'm hopeful that my colleagues will take more of a look at it, because what we're seeing as far as conduct and have throughout New York State through decades is a lot of improprieties. I also co-sponsor legislation that would take away certain perks that legislators currently are allowed to have when they're traveling, accruing hotel and mileage points while they're on the taxpayer dime, I think is ridiculous. And, that needs to be eliminated. And, this goes back to spending, it goes back to the budget, and, these small things make a difference, and, that needs to be taken into consideration. As far as campaign finance and taking money and donors, there were some remarks that were made earlier about this. I was outspent in my campaigns, my first one 5-1, my second one close to 4-1. So this notion that I'm taking big money donations is ridiculous. It's all public knowledge. You can look at it, and I'm happy to answer any questions about that.
Thank you, Mr. Ashby. Okay, we are going to move on to the last question in this round that I have. The first person to respond will be Mr. Senrick. The second person to respond will be Mr. Ashby, followed by Ms. Vogel. And the question is, are there ways in which the legislature might support a reduction in gun violence? And specifically, do you support Assembly Bill 2847, which would require gun owners to have insurance? And again, we'll start with Mr. Senrick on this question.
I believe that the way to address gun violence, well, first of all, the gun is a tool. Violence has been occurring with knives and cars. And so basically, I don't believe that I believe there are reasons that people commit violence against each other. And I think that really this is what needs to be addressed, as opposed to trying to put additional restrictions on the firearms. Because as long as we ignore the causes behind the violence, we are not going to solve this problem. The SAFE Act is in effect right now, and there are people being killed by guns and other machetes. And so I believe that is what we need to address. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Senrick. Mr. Ashby.
So I don't imagine the legislature will hesitate to take up additional legislation on gun control, given its history. And, you know, I agree with Mr. Senrick in this regard, in that when we look at the impact that this legislation has had over the last 8 years, it's remarkable. It's remarkable to think that additional legislation will have a greater impact in this. You know, and it's easy. It may be more likely for people to draw that connection right now, given the fact that bail reform has, you know, led to an increase in crime. But even before that, we were seeing an increase in gun violence in Albany and in Troy and throughout the areas in New York State. And I think education is a big piece to that. You know, I think we need to provide proper education when it comes to firearms. The NRA, as bad of a reputation that it may have with some people, provides tremendous education when it comes to firearms. For gun owners out there who want to learn how to use a firearm at a range, most of the instructors have to be certified through the NRA, go through a series of credentialing, and really make the mark in terms of being able to provide adequate instruction when it comes to firearms. And I think we need to take a second look at that, you know, especially given the crime that we're seeing throughout the area right now. A lot of people feel unsafe. We've seen an uptick in people requesting pistol permits. We need to take account into that. This is our Second Amendment right, and we need to stand by it. And no, I would not support that legislation.
Thank you, Mr. Ashby. Ms. Vogel.
So I support Second Amendment rights. I have a shotgun under my bed. I go to a gun club, and I'm a better shot than my boyfriend, so I'm always pretty proud of that. In terms of gun legislation, I don't think the insurance would really make a difference. I do support things like the gun buyback programs. I do support eliminating poverty, because where are these gun violence crimes coming from? It's from these, you know, areas of deep poverty where they're struggling just to survive. You know, everything is dealt with through the gangs and through the you know, through that kind of crime. You know, what really upsets me about you know, the gun debate is when I saw you know, hundreds of kids get murdered in Parkland. It actually motivated me to go to the March on Washington, because I felt like, why do these kids have to be, you know, subject to guns of war, you know, these weapons of war in our schools, in, you know, in our places of where we should be able to feel safe and secure. You know, that's why, you know, like Jake said, that's why pistol permits are going up, because people don't feel safe. They don't feel secure. You know, that's a fundamental thing that a government should provide to its citizens, is safety and security. The fact that we don't feel that way is really what needs to be addressed. But I support Second Amendments. I think we need to think about who's getting these guns, who's, you know, the mental health records of those people that are acquiring guns, you know, keeping them away from domestic violence offenders and people that are a danger to themselves and to others. So there is, you know, regulations that should be in place to keep people safe, but overall, you know, no one here is going to try to take away people's guns. We need to be sensible. We need to be logical. We need to keep our kids safe. I shouldn't have people, you know, people's kids at my school, at at my work that are scared to go to school every day because they think that's the day that they're going to get murdered. That's not a thought that should go through a child's head.
Thank you, Ms. Vogel. I just want to thank our candidates for being so respectful of the time and one another. I'm going to shake it up a little bit and add a question, since you all have not invoked your red cards, and I hope I don't mess up the order by shaking this up a little bit, but we do have another question before we get to the lightning round, and that is, and I think the way that the order in which we'll answer this is Ms. Vogel will go first, Mr. Senrick second, and Mr. Ashby third. And the last question in this round is, what are the most important issues facing the rural communities in our district that you as a state lawmaker could address? So Ms. Vogel, you first.
Sure. So I'm no fan of big agriculture. I think they've decimated our family farms. They've put, several family farms out of business. I want to bring those kind of family farms back. I volunteered at the Patroon Land Farm through my company as part of the Fresh Rescue, where we donate our product, and it gave me an eye-opening experience. It's a trust. They're funded by grants, and they provide all the food that comes from the Patroon Land Farm goes to the regional food bank. Those kind of programs we need to expand 100-fold through all of our, agriculture, all the rural farms in the district. I think that would be incentive that would help them stay afloat and really provide the food security that we lack in our community. When I was 23, I started a nonprofit delivering birthday cakes to kids that were living in poverty. So I really have a good sense of what, child food security means, and for child poverty, how that impacts everybody. So I think, using our farms and utilizing them in a way that keeps our families fed is super important. I also care about, these contracts that these small farms find themselves in with big agriculture. So I would support prohibiting mandatory arbitration agreements as number one, and I would support the Right to Repair Act, things that would really make sure that if the farmers have control of their stuff, they can talk to their neighbors about the contracts that they have, because they're all on NDAs. They're not allowed to speak with each other. Everything is corporate controlled. Everything is, you have to have a patent on the seed that you use that controls, how, there's so much control over these family farms, and it's time to phase that out, bring the family farms back, take care of our food security. It's going to be a huge problem in environmental, when you think about it environmentally, with the food shortages that are coming. I work in a grocery store. I see food shortages every day in my produce department. Those things are coming, and they're going to be coming more rapidly. We need to respond, and we're going to use our family farms to do that, to do such a thing.
Ms. Vogel, thank you. Mr. Senrick.
I agree that the family farms are important, and that they are in danger now because of being overtaken by larger agribusinesses. And I believe that one thing that has been a problem has been a year or so ago, the farm bill was passed, which raised the minimum wage for farm workers. I believe that that's something that should be worked out. It probably has a bigger effect on smaller farms, and it's something that would discourage them from maintaining their farm. And also the clean water issue is something else that would have an effect. And thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Senrick. Mr. Ashby.
So the big issues that I see impacting, the rural community, obviously agriculture being number one, and the regulatory environment for our farmers right now is absolutely horrible. And the bill that was passed last year, the Farm Labor Act, certainly did not make things easier on them. And again, this is an example of an unbalanced bill going to the floor and being passed by people who really don't have much of an idea of how farms are working. And it was evident just by the way that it was voted on. You know, even the Democrats who live in rural districts, they voted against it because they know that there was issues with this bill. I don't think that farmers' voices were adequately considered in the text of this bill. And we're seeing the impacts of it now, you know, across the district, whether it's in Columbia County at Altobelli Farms and Yonder Farms, down there through Rensselaer County at Harrington Farms, or up in Washington County. It's unbelievable to me that their voices are not drawing the attention that they needed. And you know, I was a staunch advocate for them. I debated this bill thoroughly along with my colleague Chris Tague, who did an exceptional job on this. You know, but we also co-sponsor legislation that would eliminate them or exempt them from the scaffold law. And again, this is another bipartisan effort. My colleague John McDonald is sponsoring legislation to limit that. But the other issue, and this is not exclusively a rural issue, is broadband. And when we look at the impact and the necessity that we really need to have broadband throughout the district right now, when it comes to schools, it's never more apparent. And I've worked across the aisle on this issue with federal representatives, with state representatives, to really do as much as we possibly can to get the funding that we need to bring broadband across the state.
Thank you, Mr. Ashby. With that, we're going to go on to a lightning round of questions. I'm very excited about this. I want to remind the candidates that you've agreed that the only answers in this segment are yes, no, or pass. Okay? So on to the first question, and Mr. Ashby will answer first, Ms. Vogel second, and Mr. Senrick third. And the question is, should New York legalize adult use non-medical cannabis? Mr. Ashby. Mr. Ashby. Not sure if folks can hear me. Ms. Vogel, could you hear that question?
Yeah, it looks like his screen is froze. But yes, I support legalizing marijuana.
Wondering how we get Mr. Ashby back.
There he is.
There he is. Mr. Ashby, I'm sorry, I'm going to repeat the question. Should New York legalize adult use non-medical cannabis?
Well, first, I thought it was very ironic that I bring up broadband and then I get disconnected because of the internet.
Mr. Ashby, yes or no?
What was the question?
Should New York legalize adult use non-medical cannabis?
Yes.
Mr. Senrick.
Yes.
Question number 2. Should Governor Cuomo sign the bill? Oh, sorry, who will answer this one first? Ms. Vogel will answer first, Mr. Senrick second, Mr. Ashby third. Question number 2. Should Governor Cuomo sign the bill, which was sponsored by Senator Breslin and Assemblymember McDonald, prohibiting the burning of AFFF, AFFF, aqueous film foaming, I knew I'd flub it, aqueous film forming foam or toxic firefighting foam at the Norlight facility in Cohoes? Ms. Vogel, yes or no?
Yes, absolutely.
Mr. Senrick?
Yes.
Mr. Ashby?
Yes.
Okay, question number 3. Mr. Senrick will answer first, Mr. Ashby second, and Ms. Vogel third. Question number 3, would you support a bill that would authorize giving terminally ill, mentally capable New Yorkers the option of medical aid in dying? Mr. Senrick?
Medical aided? Could you repeat the question?
Sure. Would you support a bill that would authorize giving terminally ill, mentally capable New Yorkers the option of medical aid in dying? Yes or no? Or pass?
N- No.
Mr. Ashby,
No.
Ms. Vogel.
Yes, I would support that.
Okay, question number 4, in which Mr. Ashby will go first, Ms. Vogel second, and Mr. Senrick third. Question number 4. A COVID-19 executive order from the governor expanded the ability of voters to vote absentee this year with the excuse of fear of COVID. Do you support legislation that would allow anyone in New York to vote absentee without an excuse? In other words, no excuse absentee voting. Mr. Ashby, yes
Yes.
or no? Mr. Ashby is a yes. Ms. Vogel
Yes.
and Mr. Senrick.
Yes.
Great. Question number 5, in which Ms. Vogel will answer first, Mr. Senrick second, and Mr. Ashby third. In the same vein as the question I just asked, do you support same-day voter registration? Ms. Vogel,
Yes.
Mr. Senrick,
Yes.
and Mr. Ashby.
Yes.
Well, thank you. That concludes the portion of this debate where I pose questions to you. And again, I just want to really thank our panelists for the decorum, for the respect they've shown one another and to me, the moderator, and also their respect for time. It is a true skill to be able to fit substantive answers into 2 minutes. And those skills will be on display now with your closing statements. You'll be given 2 minutes for a closing statement. And we will start in reverse order from the opening statements. Ms. Vogel will go first, Mr. Senrick will go second, and Mr. Ashby will go last. Ms. Vogel.
Thank you. And again, thank you for being a wonderful host. I want to thank the League of Women Voters and the Sanctuary for Independent Media for hosting this event. I think it's been great. It's been great to be able to reach out to the voters in the district and hear my vision and my goals for the community. I think it's imperative right now that we, in this new political era, an era where 10 years ago, someone like me, someone, working in a grocery store, leading 120 essential workers, wouldn't be able to run for office. Here I am trying to make a difference for the people that I see their pain every single day. I'm tired of watching elected officials take money from their donors and do their bidding and leave us in the dust. It's time for working people, all over our country and all over our state to really take charge and give a direction of where we want our state to go and where we want our country to go. We need to be thinking forward. We need to have a vision. We need to see the opportunities and investments that we can make that will make our state sustainable for the future. And those things start now. If we don't make the changes we need to make today, then we're looking at devastation in the next 10, 20, 30, 40 years. So it's going to be up to us, it's going to be up to my generation to really make the changes, really invest in our education, our healthcare, our environment, our childcare, all these things that help working people get up to the next level. We all want the American dream. We all want to succeed. We don't want to have financial instability and insecurity dragging our lives down. I don't want to have $100,000 in debt for my entire life. Those kind of things, the debts that are put on working people, we need to really make a change and make a government that actually works for the people and by the people. That's why I'm running for office. I hope to represent you in the assembly, where you will be the only voice that I listen to. I understand what leadership means. I understand what it means to have compassion and empathy and listening and understanding and accountability and being guided by principles and ethics. And I will bring that to the assembly. I will be your voice in the assembly, and I really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Vogel. Mr. Senrick.
I want to thank the League of Women Voters and the Sanctuary for Independent Media, and also our moderator, Corinne, and my fellow candidates, Assemblyman Jake Ashby and Brittany Vogel, not only for being here tonight, but for their commitment and service to their community. As a libertarian, I believe that the purpose of government is to protect people's rights to life, liberty, and property. Over the last 100 years or so, the government has inserted itself more into our lives, and we have come to look to the government to solve all of our problems. Looking at the situation we are in now, I don't believe that is sound. I do not want you to think, however, that I want to slash government funding immediately. It has taken a long time for us to build up this dependence on government solutions for every problem. So we can't, it's not something we should pull the rug out on too quickly, but we should explore alternative funding options, voluntarism, and associations to help provide solutions alongside government solution. As the government solution requires less funding or is no longer necessary, the funding can be returned to the people. I believe that this lessening of the hold of government will give people the freedom to live their lives as they choose and allow people to interact more naturally with others, be it business transactions or personal. And I will work for liberty and justice for all if you choose to elect me to this office. But whoever you choose to vote for, please vote. Thank you.
Mr. Senrick. Mr. Ashby, you have the floor.
I want to thank the League of Women Voters and you, Corinne, for hosting tonight's event. I want to thank my opponents for being here and engaging in a meaningful dialogue. You know, I think that this district faces some formidable challenges, and you know, I'm no stranger to serving in hard times. As an officer in the United States Army, serving overseas during combat and humanitarian missions in Africa, and also as an occupational therapist in a variety of settings. You know, many of the times as an OT, stepping into things, you're stepping into a situation where someone's have had the worst event in their life, and you are there to help guide them through and help them recover. And it's a privilege to be a part of that process, as it is a privilege to represent the constituents of the 107th District. And I know that we will face these challenges together. I know that we will meet them, and I know that we will find success. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ashby. I want to thank all of the candidates this evening. I thought that this was a wonderful debate. We covered such an incredible range of topics. The recording from this debate will be available. Wish I could tell you how. I believe it'll be available on Facebook and perhaps on the League of Women Voters of Rensselaer County's website. I want to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this debate and for the Sanctuary and also thank the Sanctuary for Independent Media for co-hosting this event and providing the technical support. Just a word about the Sanctuary. This is not normally the kind of thing that the Sanctuary does, but for 15 years, we've been building infrastructure in support of art, media, and science, and we're grateful that that infrastructure could be of some use tonight. You may know that I am not only a member of the League of Women Voters of Rensselaer County, but I'm also a volunteer correspondent for the Hudson Mohawk magazine, which is run out of the Sanctuary for Independent Media. We are most known for operating a campus of activities in North Central Troy. Our initiatives include the radio station, WOOC, which airs the Hudson Mohawk magazine every weeknight from 6 to 7 and drive time in the morning. And youth programming, urban gardens. We present a wide variety of music. We host a speaker series, and we do environmental education and action. So I am honored to be involved with the Sanctuary, and I'm grateful to both the League and the Sanctuary for hosting this debate tonight. Thank you for joining us, and with that, I will wish you a good night.